Welcome to San Mateo County Today. Conversations with government leaders throughout San Mateo County. Here's your host, Linda Morrissey.
Hi, welcome to San Mateo County Today. My guests today are Supervisor Don Horsley, Supervisor of District 3 in San Mateo County, and later we'll be talking with Mayor Helen Fisicaro from Colma. So we'll start with you. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
It's very nice to have you here, Supervisor Horsley.
Nice to be here.
Thanks. Let's start by some great news. Recent opening of the Devil's Slide Coastal Trail. I know this is a big deal in San Mateo County. I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the highlights and challenges of that process of getting that in place.
Well, the challenge really was, the old roadway was not in very good shape, and it was these rocks fall down continuously, and we're trying to figure out how can we make this into a really world-class vista, and we figured that it would take a couple $1 million. And fortunately, what we did is we put on a ballot a measure, it was called Measure A. It was a half-cent sales tax in the county, and one of the things that we talked about were increasing funding for our park. So that was the first part of the piece. We got the funding, basically a couple $1 million for not only the improvements in the road, but also to add a couple of rangers. And it turns out to be, it's a spectacular success. Now, we still have K-rails that were from when the road was an actual roadway. There are K-rails that make sure that they are a concrete barrier so people don't drive over the cliffs, basically. And so they are alongside, but we painted them with graffiti-proof paint. We'll see if that actually turns out to work. We had to fill all the cracks in the roadway, take out all those the reflectors to make it into a smooth path for bicyclists. So part of the roadway, about 12 feet, is reserved for bicycles both to and fro, and the other 12 closest to the ocean side are for pedestrians. And the remarkable thing about being able to walk on the road is that, you in the past, you're driving through, you maybe see the ocean, but you never really get a chance to take a look at the birds that are soaring. You don't realize how high up you are until you're there and you see all these birds that are soaring up there. I have a great picture of a peregrine falcon making her nest.
Wow.
And then you can take a look at the geology. So what we've seen so far is that there are college students, high school students coming out to take a look at the geology of the rock, the foundation of the rock, or formation of the rock, as well as the birds. And we have made some remarkable recoveries of birds that were bordering on, I don't know if extinction, but they had been significantly impacted by DDT, for example.
Right.
And they've made a spectacular comeback, and you get to see those birds, and it just is remarkable. And you're walking along, you hear the ocean crashing against the side of the mountain. It's there is also a sort of a deck area that with binoculars, so you can take a look. You can actually see the Farallon Island. So we anticipate that it'll be visited by somewhere in the neighborhood about 80,000 people a year.
Wow. Well, we hope everyone gets out there and visit this new jewel of the county. I know you're a huge supporter of agriculture, the agricultural community in San Mateo County. Could you tell us a little bit about what we're doing to support them?
Well, agricultural producers, it's really our heritage. San Mateo County really was the breadbasket for San Francisco, and a lot of it's disappeared, and there's a lot of development over on the 101 Bayside. But on the coast side, the South Coast still is agricultural, predominantly agriculture. We have about $140 million worth of product a year that comes out of our coast side. All the artichokes and Brussels sprouts that you see from your table, the farmers markets or in your markets or in a restaurant, they all come from San Mateo County's coast side. So to support them, there are a number of things that they need in terms of support. They need a stable workforce, and they need access to water, and they need also to be able to market their products locally. And for example, we don't want them necessarily to stick everything on a truck and send it to New York, have it then processed and come back to California. It's really a source of locally grown, wholesome food. So it's food security, and it also preserves our agricultural heritage. So the things we are working on is we have a group called the Resource Conservation District, and we work with them. They help farmers and landowners protect some natural resources like creeks and streams and things of that sort. We to help with our workforce, this year I set aside $500,000 to work on farm labor housing. We've waived some of the permit requirements. Not that we've eliminated the requirements, but we just, instead of charging somebody or charging a farmer for improvements, we waive all those fees just to encourage the building and support of really quality housing for our farm workers. Now, I'm not going to say that we've gotten there yet in terms of quality, but it's it's a gradual process. We're working on that to improve that the housing for farm laborers. The other thing about our labor force there is we have about 1,700. It's kind of surprising to people, about 1,700 people involved in farming or farm labor on the coast side. But we have a real problem with finding affordable housing.
Yeah.
Just as you do on the base side. But the farmers themselves, their income level is very, the profit margin is very narrow, and the amount of money that farm laborers make is, it's not minimum wage, but it's not like $80,000 a year. So what we have to do is be able to provide housing that they can afford. So those are the things that we're working on, and we're making some headway and some progress, and have some pretty good partners in Post, in Mid-Peninsula Open Space, as well as the farmers themselves.
Great. That's good to know. Healthcare is such a big issue right now, and especially mental health. It's in the news a lot, and finally getting some of the recognition I think it's needed for a long time. And I understand that we're building a new mental health facility to replace the aging Cordilleras hospital.
Well, we will. We're really in a planning stage of it.
Okay.
The hospital has, I think the number of people in that hospital is somewhere near about 100.
Okay.
And the facility is it was built originally as a tuberculosis hospital. So it's a concrete and steel edifice. Was perfectly fine for that kind of a hospitalization program in the 1920s, but it's no longer suitable for mentally ill populations. So what we hope to do is knock it down and build cottages with no more than 15 residents in each cottage, and they're not necessarily lot cottages either. They're a much different environment. And our thoughts are that one of the things we know about people who are mentally ill, if you can you stabilize them, and a lot of mental illness can be stabilized with medication and some degree of support as well. But they need to have an environment that's more normalized if we're going to get them back into the community so they can be with their families. Then you want to have a more normalized atmosphere as opposed to something that is a concrete edifice. So we are doing looking around at different areas, like Ventura County has some facilities that I recently toured, and they're really the kinds of facilities. That's the kind of thing I'd like to see: smaller units, more therapeutic, better outcomes. And they are more expensive, but I think it's the right thing to do.
So, and this would be on the site of the Cordilleras
That is
Hospital
on the site
now?
of Cordilleras. We also do some other things. We have a project that we call it Beyond Newtown. Essentially, what we decided to do is, because of these tragedies we've seen in other areas, to really bolster mental health support in our schools and to develop a crisis intervention teams for our schools. So we work with law enforcement, the Office of Education for the county, and school districts, as well as mental health and our probation department. And we put together a program, and we really have bolstered mental health support, as well as those crisis intervention teams, to work with our school authorities. And we've also done some work on figuring out protocols so that we can share information. So before, that you couldn't share mental health information, school information, law enforcement information, probation information. Everybody had this, different silo.
Right.
So we've worked it out so that for certain cases, we're able to share that information legally.
Great.
Connect the dots, if you will.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. It's
Right.
such an important thing. I understand that there's a Plan Princeton project that is going to sort of
Yes.
shift the way the county deals with the Princeton by the Sea area. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Well, when I was a sheriff for a long time.
Yeah.
One of the things that used to get complaints in my office that about abandoned vehicles and people living in well, it really wasn't housing, but they were living in convex boxes and living in old concrete boats that had been abandoned. And so I did a lot of work in cleaning up, getting rid of things. There was one, for example, guy that would get these abandoned buses from San Francisco, and then he'd lease them to people as rental units. But there's no water, no sanitation, no electric.
Yeah.
So we cleaned that up. When I got back to the Board of Supervisors after an absence of some 4 years, one of my priorities was taking a look at Princeton again, and all of a sudden I saw that all the junk cars, all the people living in convex boxes. We actually made a joke about a room with a view with one convex box on top of the other with a window cut out of the top. And we started the process all over again of cleaning up get rid of the abandoned vehicles, getting people out of living in substandard housing. For example, one person, he would go to work and he'd leave his girlfriend locked in one of these convex boxes. So you can't allow things like that. Now, that's not to say that we want them to be homeless. We were providing social services to get them some other place to live where there is, a safer living environment. But in any case, after doing all that, we started thinking about how is it that if we can do code enforcement like these kinds of efforts periodically, but unless you have a different vision for that community, it's simply going to go back to what it was before.
Right.
And there's a lot of empty lots. It's the zoning on it is very restrictive. It restricts it to it's a working waterfront. And the fishing industry, while it's great, really isn't big enough to be able to sustain that community. So the goal was to talk to the people who live there. There are people who live there in regular housing, to the business owners, to the property owners, and to the broader community as well, and say about what is it that we want for this community. So it's not a vision that I have. It's a vision I want the broader community as well as the community Princeton to decide on. And ultimately, we think, the Coastal Commission requires to be visitor serving, access to the ocean, and it has to also support our fishing industry. So, and we think that it has some great recreational opportunities. So, mixing that together with what people in the broader community want, and coming up with a better vision for that community, so that we can kind of tweak the zoning to allow for something that is, I think an improvement or better than what it is today.
Got it. Okay. We're short on time. Of the things we've covered, and maybe some that we haven't, what would you say are the one or two big things that the Board of Supervisors really wants to be focusing on in the next couple of years?
Well, one of the things that I really want to focus on are housing, and probably because I have children, and one of my youngest, my two of them live in the Bay Area. One lives in Albany, one in Daly City. And my youngest one said, "Hey, Dad, I'd really like to stay in San Mateo County, but I don't think I can because I can't afford it." So I think that for all, if the idea of having an extended family, be able to see your grandchildren, you got to have housing for our younger people. You got to have housing for our workforce, and you have to stop people, or not stop, but necessarily the more housing you have, the more of our workforce lives here locally, the fewer people driving in and out, and ultimately, it reduces greenhouse gases. And I think the other challenge for us on the coast side is really going to be water.
Water. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on San Mateo County today.
It's been fun.
Really appreciate it, and hope we can have you back
Sure,
soon.
Love to.
We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, we'll be talking with Mayor Helen Fisicaro from Colma. Welcome back. We're talking with Mayor Helen Fisicaro, the mayor of Colma. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here.
Good to be here.
Thanks. I'd like to, doing a little research on Colma. Colma's a very unique town. I'm wondering if, just for those that might not know, if you can give us a little history lesson on how it came to be known as the City of Souls.
Yeah, we're known as the City of Souls because most people know that we have 17 cemeteries, and the way we became that way is in the late 1800s, San Francisco outlawed burying anyone in San Francisco. Land became too valuable. So they passed a law, and they contacted relatives of those that had been buried in San Francisco and started moving them south. And unincorporated Colma, which is now incorporated Colma, is where the land was purchased for many different cemeteries, Holy Cross being one of the first ones. And almost every Colma cemetery has a designated burial site for those they couldn't identify or they couldn't reach a relative, and they have some kind of dedicated monument explaining where these bodies came from. And our Colma Historical Association gives tours of the cemeteries. We have a lot of famous folks buried there, like Joe DiMaggio, and I just recently learned Eddie Fisher is now buried in Colma. And Wyatt Earp, which gets a lot of visitors, and that's usually the question of the day when they walk into City Hall, where's he buried? Steve Silverman, who's the founder of Beach Blanket Babylon, and several governors and mayors and many more famous souls are part of the Colma underground population. But we're only 2.2 square miles, and with about 1,500 living residents, and 75% of the land is dedicated to the cemeteries of Colma, and the rest is residential and commercial.
Got it. I think from what I've read, the city's economic situation is also fairly unique. Can you share with our viewers a little bit about your unique tax revenue situation?
So because we have a small population living, the 1,500 residents obviously would not be able to contribute to the infrastructure that a larger city would need.
Right.
And most of our property then is commercial. The cemeteries, most of them are nonprofit or not-for-profit, so we don't get a lot of money from them. And so we are 2.5% of our revenue stream is the property tax. We're a low city property tax. And 54% comes from sales tax and about 31% from the cardroom tax. And the economy, when it's good, Colma does really well because we have Auto Row, we have 280 Metro, Sarah Center. But when the economy took a downturn several years ago, we lost 5 auto dealerships like overnight. And we immediately put some restraints on our spending. We went ahead and curbed all our capital improvement projects. And even though we had money in reserves, we wanted to be very conservative and watch our dollars. And since then, we froze, like I said, we froze positions and salaries, and we ended up dipping into our reserves to pay for expenditures. The council was very prudent and immediately addressed the situation. It's like turning that ship right away instead of waiting several years and then having no money and then going into bankruptcy, which we did not want to do. And we were very appreciative of the Colma team that collaborated with us, our employees that didn't take a raise, and they were very good at bringing suggestions on how we could cut expenditures and save money. We hired a consultant to put together an economic development plan, and we commissioned a Colma commercial video and radio spots to boost the holiday shopping, because that's usually when people come in. It's a regional shopping destination. And it showcased a variety of businesses, and it really gave Shop Till You Drop another perspective from Colma's vantage point. We have a business newsletter that goes out because we really embrace business. And the business newsletter gives them some helpful hints on saving money and energy and water, and we've had them come in for breakfasts, and then some of them have signed up for free audits and have already turned around and saved money on their utility bills. And since 1994, I've worked with many different councils that strategically have been conservative in their spending. And in 2003, we took out certificates of participation, which are like bonds, to pay for the building of our police station, our community center, and our museum. And over the years, we've been watching that money. It made sense at the time we took the money out. But now, because the economy changed, we waited until we were on the other side of the loan, and we got a lot of convincing from our staff over several meetings to turn around and pay off those certificates of participation. So now we are debt-free, which is unusual for a city or a community.
Very unusual, yeah.
And we will save $7 million in interest between now and 2033.
That's amazing, right?
It should up our credit rating right away.
Yeah. I understand that the town of Colma will be celebrating its 90th anniversary in August.
Yes.
Coming up. So what are you doing to prepare for that?
So as you mentioned, our anniversary is in August. That was the August in 1924 is when Colma incorporated. And because that was the Roaring 20s, we have a few things going on. We've commissioned Kingston Media to do a video and research the history. There's a lot of a wealth of history in Colma, and they have been taping many people that either were related to folks that were here back in the time or are still around, because we have lost a lot of our folks that have the rich history. A lot of pictures have been found, a lot of newspaper articles, so it's going to be a great video. It will be showcased on Friday, September 5th at our community center, and there will be many showings because we would like all of the community, whether it's within Colma or in the San Mateo County, to view it. Then the following day is our annual town residential picnic, and we have the 1920s theme. And what we're doing, we asked our youth that are actually taking dance lessons or music lessons to perform music and dances from the 1920s, like the Roaring Twenties Charleston. Right. And we asked also anyone that's over 90 or any business that's been around over 90 years, we will be celebrating them as well. So it's really continuing that theme throughout this year.
That's great. That sounds really fun to look forward to. You had mentioned to me that although Colma is a small town, it still has some of the same challenges as big cities. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Well, we sit in the middle of a big metropolis. You know, we're unique and we have autonomy, but we're not isolated because we're part of the whole peninsula from San Francisco all the way down to San Jose. Mm. And there's major thoroughfares that come through Colma. We're surrounded by the two BART stations. 280 is on our west. And we have the 280 Metro, Sarah Center, and Auto Row. So a lot of folks come to Colma, and because they're shopping, even though you have the commercial area, it does bring crime elements. So, you know, we have shoplifting and things like that. And so because it's a regional destination, between about 30 and 50,000 folks come through or to Colma on a regular basis, depending if it's a weekday or a weekend. So we must provide public safety services and infrastructure for those needs. Like other cities, we've experienced an uptick in crime, and so our police department immediately reactivated the Neighborhood Watch program. We had several meetings, and people are not afraid to call in. Sometimes they'll go, this may not be anything, but this is what I'm noticing in the neighborhood. And some of it has really panned out to be, unfortunately, not good people that are in the neighborhood breaking into homes. Mm-hmm. And we've done an increased communication with not only with the residents but with the businesses, especially during the holiday season. Our police department goes out to explain to them when crime does seem to pick up a little bit during the holiday season, what they can do to better handle it so that nobody gets hurt. Mm-hmm. And we've also experienced changes, as many other cities have, in personnel. We're in the process right now. We have an interim police chief. Our police chief just retired. Mm-hmm. And we have a brand new city manager that we hired. So we go through the same process as all the other cities do.
Right, okay. I understand that several books have been written about Colma, movies, even a musical.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, people like to write about Colma, which is great, and I brought some of the books with me today. We have The City of Souls, that was written by Michael Zvanovic and Shirley Burgett, who actually, I believe, teach at CSM or have done a lot of history books throughout the county. Wow. And then a gentleman by Michael Smookler has done a book with the photographs, Images of America, Colma. And then, interesting enough, we had a mystery novel written about Colma called Alive in Necropolis by Doug Dorst. And I heard a rumor it may eventually become a TV program or a movie, which would be great because there's lots of interesting items to read about in that book. And then films that have used Colma as a character. 9 Months was filmed in Colma at Saramonte Ford. Harold and Maude, and a lot of folks may not even know what Harold and Maude was, but that was many, many years ago.
I remember Harold and Maude.
The Wedding Planner was actually filmed in the Italian cemetery when J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez, was visiting her mother's gravesite in the Italian cemetery. Unfortunately, that ended up on the cutting room floor. Yeah. But it was exciting for the children of Colma because they got a few minutes to meet her, and she did take a little bit of time out of her busy schedule to say hello to them. And there's a wrestler named The Undertaker. He filmed a commercial in one of our cemeteries on a cold, foggy night coming out of the grave, and we stood there in the freezing cold and the rain. It was creepy, but it was interesting. So,
how fun.
And then you mentioned the musical. Colma the Musical was filmed in Colma. I've been fortunate to meet the producer and director. He actually grew up in Daly City and decided on Colma to do his musical, and he's received a lot of awards. It was very creative. It was a lot of talent there. But I found that the theme of it was the more things change, the more they remain the same. Mm-hmm. So that's Colma's famous, I guess, 15 minutes of fame.
Oh, that's amazing. It sounds like it's a fun place to visit.
It is.
We have just a few seconds left. You're in your 6th term as mayor of Colma. What keeps you interested?
Well, I've been serving the public since 1994, and I've been fortunate to have been appointed or selected as the mayor 6 times. And it's always been important to me to give back to my community. I originally ran on the platform of hiring fair and equitably, as well as making sure that the budget was easy to be read by the residents and the businesses.
Right.
And I also, in my work life before I retired, I worked on a project that was a $180 million construction project. So that gave me an insight on how capital improvement projects work, because I can read those documents and ask questions that probably the average person would not know to ask. It's important for me to continue working on Colma's upcoming projects, because we're going to be renovating Town Hall. That's probably a 3-year project in the future. We're putting Hillside Boulevard on a road diet because we're taking 2 lanes out of traffic. We're adding more parking to the community center. And I would just love Colma to help Colma move in a more progressive manner, as it has been doing. I also serve on multiple organizations that serve not only the Count of Colma residents, but also San Mateo County residents. And I've been involved in a litany of organizations that I've been able to contribute my talents and skills to, which include Seton Medical Center's New Life Center, North County Food Pantry, and Rebuilding Together. And I love serving and connecting people with San Mateo County organizations, because it's important that they get assisted with their challenges. And I sincerely do it from my heart. I'm humbled. I've been recognized by being inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame and receiving other community awards, but I don't do it for that. I really do it from my heart, because it's the right thing to do. And so in my 20 years of serving on the town council, I can proudly say that I've only missed 1 council meeting due to surgery. But I'm hardworking, and I take this job and honor of serving seriously.
Yeah, Colma's very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure talking with you today. Thanks very much for joining us. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time on San Mateo County Today.